Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi there. Welcome to Raising Me. I'm Adrienne Stein. Thanks so much for joining us today. Of course, a big thank you as well to our sponsor of Sweetser Behavioral Health. Today, we're talking about something that actually comes up, I think, for every single family, and it's whether you're parenting a toddler or a tween or a teen, and it's manners, modern manners. Not, the stiff, old school rules for just rules' sake, but really the everyday stuff. How we talk to people, how we handle conflict, what we model online, how we teach kids to be kind and confident in the world. I find that sometimes the hardest part can be knowing what to correct, how to correct it, and how to do it without turning into like the manners police, right? In a way that really sticks. So I'm really excited about this one because my guest today is Daniel Post Senning from the Emily Post Institute. Yes, he is the great-great-grandson of the famous etiquette authority Emily Post, and he works to carry on her legacy through the Institute. Really neat guy, and they're doing so much great work. He's here to help us make manners feel practical, realistic, actually useful for real life. So we're going to talk about what etiquette really is, how to teach it without shaming kids, and how to handle modern situations that we as parents are navigating every day. So, check it out. Dan, I am so glad to have you here. I have a list about a mile long on etiquette because, as we've talked about on the show, I have a 7-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 18-year-old. And so we have etiquette that we can learn, I think, at every phase.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, there's an etiquette approach to almost every situation because ultimately etiquette's about how we choose to interact with each other. And that human interaction is at the heart of so much of what we do and so many of the important decisions that we make.
Okay, so let's talk about what you do. And I'd like to hear about what you do and where you are in your parenting journey. And before even that, though, when people find out that you work for Emily Post Institute, do they sort of sit up a little bit straighter and think about, okay, what am I saying? Am I going to have good manners?
Only every time I walk into a room and represent myself as an etiquette expert or an authority on etiquette. It's a word that people are naturally ambivalent about. Everyone wants to think about the best ways to behave. Everyone wants to be treated with consideration, respect, and honesty. But it's almost universal that we don't want to be told what to do. We don't want the scolding, shoulding, finger pointing that so many people associate with etiquette. When the eye is judgmental and directed at us, it's so uncomfortable and awkward. So how you approach etiquette in a way that's positive, potentially transformational as a tool for self-improvement is one way to approach the topic. But that experience of feeling uncomfortable, out of place, or judged is a real experience for people. And I think it can give us a clue about how to use etiquette to its best advantage. It really is most useful, most functional when we're using that eye gently for ourselves. And it becomes so much less functional when we're using it to judge or assess others.
I mean, Emily Post is iconic when it comes to etiquette. So how did that shape you growing up? Tell us how you're related to Emily Post, but then how it shaped how you grew up and sort of what was expected of you.
It's a great question. It sets us up very well for a parenting podcast because the Emily Post Institute is a 5-generation family business. The original Emily Post was my great-great-grandmother. She wrote her first book about etiquette, titled Etiquette, in 1922. So the Emily Post Institute is a steward of a 100-year etiquette tradition. Emily founded the Institute with her son to continue her work promoting and advocating for civility and decency in America after her passing. She had updated her book over the course of her lifetime 10 times. So it's a tradition that started off with a sense of evolution, and Emily herself was iterative. She went through multiple revisions of the book so that it changed and evolved over her lifetime. And the Emily Post Institute's continued that work in the time since her passing through the next 4 generations of the family. And sometimes people ask me, what would success look like at Emily Post? And I always say, if I'm a good steward of that family tradition, that legacy, if I'm able to hand it off to the 6th generation of the Post family, that would be, for me, real success.
And you're a parent yourself. So how do you instill those etiquette and the manners that, as you alluded to certainly do evolve over the years, but how do you instill that into your own kids?
Well, I definitely think it starts at home. And my mother really developed the current version of our children's etiquette training, our approach to children's etiquette and how we teach it. And when she was early on in her process of building that material and teaching it, she used to say, it's the most important thing you can do is model the behaviors that you want to see in your kids. And it wasn't long. We hadn't been teaching that material for very long before she adapted her language and changed it and started saying, you need to be the kind of person you want your kids to be. That it's not just about modeling behaviors, that they are watching you all the time when you intend to be giving lessons and when you don't. And that's where the real learning takes place. So the best advice that I could give any parent is to be the kind of person that you want your kids to be, and to treat them the way you would want them to treat others, the way you would want to be treated. And those are the lessons that will be lifelong, that will stick with them. And it's not a switch that we can turn on and off. It really is something that we have to approach in a fundamental way, because these are fundamental skills that we're passing on.
And they are applicable to just about every phase of life. How would you define manners?
I have a working definition that I love to share. I like to think of etiquette as a combination of manners and principles, and that you need to have both of those things. That manners are an expression of core principles or core values. The manners are the particular behaviors that we expect of ourselves and others in a given situation, and they're incredibly useful. They tell us what to do. They tell us what to expect of others. They're oftentimes a shortcut to best choices or best options for how we interact with others. But manners change and evolve. They change from one situation to another. They change over time. There's a famous etiquette book called Kiss, Bow, Shake Hands that's about the way we navigate cross-cultural expectations around manners. So manners are one part. Those are the behaviors, and they're what oftentimes people think of when they think of etiquette. So offer to help someone with a door, or say please or thank you. These are particular behavioral expectations. The core principles that we use to guide our application of manners, to assess the utility of manners as they change and evolve, come and go, are consideration, respect, and honesty. And those core principles are timeless and eternal. Over 5 generations at the Emily Post Institute, we've watched people's expectations stay remarkably consistent around people being aware of each other. That's consideration. People valuing each other. That's respect. And people being both trustworthy and honest, but also sincere and genuine in their representation of themselves. That, for me, is honesty. And those core principles can be expressed in a lot of different ways. We might show respect with a kiss, a bow, or a handshake in different contexts, but we honor first meetings. We show respect to others. And that stays consistent. So you can use those principles to guide you as you're assessing manners, when to apply them, how to teach them. But you can always hold yourself accountable to standards of consideration, respect, and honesty.
Consideration, respect, honesty. It's something to just file away, because those show up so many times in life, but certainly on a parenting journey, right? There are moments every day that we can bring those to our kids and ourselves.
Absolutely. And I'll even be a little more specific about those values. There are other great values in life, and there are lots of good reasons to make choices and do things. But when we think about etiquette, we're thinking about human connection and relationships and how we build and support relationships or grow relationships. And values of consideration, respect, and honesty are pretty unassailable in that context. I can come up with lots of scenarios where you might make different choices for all kinds of different reasons. But when we're using the etiquette lens and we're thinking about improving or growing relationships, you almost can't be let down by showing someone consideration, respect, and honesty.
Amen to that. What's the best age to start having these conversations or teaching etiquette, manners to kids? And like, what would even look like as little kids?
Sure. Well, it can start before someone's even born. We say that etiquette begins with parents, and it begins when you become aware of that parenting journey beginning, and there are appropriate skills and things to teach at each stage of social development along a child's life. Obviously, those in utero messages are received in entirely different ways than the messages that we receive as adolescents or teens. But we take approach that's about social development, and it's an ages and stages approach to teaching etiquette. We like to think about core competencies, like those core values of consideration, respect, and honesty, but some areas that are really important to human relationships. So greeting and parting, how we dine, how we share food, how we communicate, and that has so much, that has to do with things that are beyond the voice that we use and the words that we choose. It has to do with the way we stand, the way we hold ourselves, the way we make eye contact and look at each other. And there are age appropriate lessons for all of those core competencies at every stage of social development. So you have to know your child. There's some big picture targets, some things that we can talk about that work generally at certain stages, but it's also about knowing what are reasonable expectations for your child, and then holding those expectations and communicating them clearly.
What do you find are some of the basic manners that they're most impactful, right? Like, one thing that I think about, holding doors, sending thank you notes, like some of the simple things that have the highest impact. What are some of those that in your time with Emily Post and certainly growing up in that environment, what are some of those key things that, for us as parents would be really worthwhile to instill in our kids starting at a young age?
Sure. I mean, a couple of them I've already teased a little bit. Good manners for greeting and parting are great places to start.
And what does that
Etiquette,
look like? Like, for greeting and parting, is it a firm handshake, looking in the eye? Like, what are some of those key things for greeting and parting that are really impactful?
yeah. Again, I'll give you an ages and stages answer. So for that little newborn, that little baby who's maybe not even social smiling yet, it's about that eye contact and about the face-to-face connection, the physical touch, the holding of that child that comes with the eye contact, calm tones of voice so that children start to hear a human voice as something that's comforting and nurturing. That's a great place to begin, being willing to introduce yourself slowly, approach a child with care, that you don't rush into their space. That starts to establish that expectation in them that that's how we behave with other people. We don't get right into someone's face too fast, too quickly, too loudly. As they become more, as they start to have more social skills, you can start to play with those things, play with the eye contact, play with the hellos, goodbyes, the nonverbal acknowledgments, the little waves hello and waves goodbyes. You start to build those patterns in as they develop those skills. Once they can start to walk around, they can start to be encouraged to come out from behind mom's leg when it's time to say hi to someone and make that eye contact. There's an early eye contact lesson. We talk about an actionable tip for parents out there working on it. When even grandma can be a little bit scary, I find people of all types scary. Eye contact can be an unsettling thing. You can encourage a child to look at the bridge of someone's nose. It's a great way to start to build the capacity to open your face up and direct your face at someone without losing yourself into the abyss of their gaze, which can be a little unsettling. It's also a great tactic for grownups. If you find yourself in a situation where you're wondering what to do with your eyes and you're in face-to-face conversation with someone. So that trick of looking at the bridge of someone's nose, we then start to add the greetings, the verbal greetings, the hellos, the goodbyes. As they start to have the capacity to have conversation, you can start to see the conversation. Hello, Grandma, it's so good to see you. How was the trip? You can start to give them some sample scripts that they can use to open up conversations. And then as they get older and older, the expectations start to be that they do these things independently, that they're able to identify the situations that they're in and what those good best practice behaviors are and start to employ them in ways that make sense to them and are coherent to them, but that they do it on their own and they get good positive feedback for the ways that they do those things.
Kids all learn in such different ways too. And I want, that is easier, I have found, because, I have 3 kids, so they're all different in their skill sets. But
Yeah.
it's more difficult for kids who are a little bit more introverted to make that eye contact or say, hi, how are you, in a, confident way. Is that just practice, just encouraging them to practice? Or, how do we get them out of their shell in order to be able to have these nice manners, just to help them in
Yeah.
life?
As a self-identified social introvert, someone who needs solo time and quiet time to recover themselves, I'm sympathetic and I really appreciate that approach. Something that has been really valuable for me over 20 years of burying myself in this material and writing about it and teaching it is that it's given me some skills to overcome that social introversion. And one of the tactics that can be really helpful for someone who doesn't find those types of experiences comfortable is having a social script, an idea of what's expected so that you can hit those marks. And it's amazing. One of the things that's so affirming and so rewarding about teaching etiquette is that when done well, it's playing on things that naturally feel very good to us as humans. The reinforcement for doing these things well is making strong social connections with other people. And there's nothing that is more satisfying as a human than feeling connected to people around you. We are social creatures, and it is deeply rewarding on every level, psychologically, physically, spiritually, to feel the rewards of good human contact and good human interaction. So for those social introverts, giving them some expected behavior, some shortcuts to places that are very rewarding in that human experience is one of the ways to start to give them skills to overcome those things, or at least have tools so that when they want to be able to engage socially and build and grow their networks and their relationships, that they've got the capacity to do it. I don't think it's a deficiency to be a little socially introverted, but I think it's something to be aware of in yourself. And there are ways that you can work with that and still be a dynamic, interesting, engaging person in this world and be a social introvert.
Well, just like anything, it's a learned skill, right? And it's a skill
Absolutely.
that's going to come maybe a little bit easier for some kids than for others. But the idea is like that you just keep practicing, and practice is okay. And it's okay if you're not perfect at it or, right out of the gate. One thing we talk about, we're teaching kids, but I know as a mom, I've had moments where I'm trying to correct my child in public, but you also don't want to embarrass them. Like how is, any sort of guidance on, as we're teaching kids, the sort of where, when, and how to correct behavior?
Absolutely. And this is a tough one. It's not easy, particularly when you end up in those public situations where you feel like your child's behavior is impacting other people. I think there's oftentimes a 2-tiered approach. There's a certain amount of parental responsibility in identifying how your child is impacting other people and taking the necessary steps to keep that impact as positive as possible. Things are going to happen. People are relatively understanding about children's behavior, particularly at certain ages. I say relatively understanding. Not everyone has patience for it, but the in the moment intervention, I think, is important because that also teaches your children about where your lines are, what it is that's important to you, why you're making decisions. So when that tantrum's happening in a store, willingness to pick the child up and leave. that it's not about fixing it right there. Everyone in that store isn't part of your either disciplining process, corrective action, or teaching process. It's really about minimizing that negative impact. And I think that there are lessons that children learn. We say they're learning from you all the time. It's not just how you intellectualize and re-articulate what's important to learn about that situation, but it's how you behave. So both taking that necessary action, but also being in control of your emotions as it happens, so that you're not losing control, that you're
Yeah.
that you're part of a solution in a difficult situation or scenario, is something that your children are going to take away every time on a deep level. So there's that part of it. I do think there is a lot of room to then, every problem is an opportunity, every obstacle is eventually the path. Those are your opportunities for good discussion. And an experience that I had with my mother is that she treated me like a functional adult. And we always say it's important to raise good kids, but it's also really important to raise good adults. And the ways that we raise good adults is that we give children the credit of being able to understand. And we have to understand where they're at. They're concrete thinkers. The littles, the youngers in their stages of social development need concrete examples. They can't have an abstracted conversation about the impact of behavior. But you can talk about how it feels when someone does this to you or does that to you or acts this way or acts that way. You make it real. You make your examples concrete and specific for the young ones. For the older ones, you can talk more about how they think or feel about a situation and explore different possibilities and options in terms of how you proceed differently in the future, or what would be good reparative work. You talked about thank you notes already. Sometimes a good apology is part of a good reparative process. So, and those are opportunities that start to present themselves out of difficulty.
Speaking of repair too, and to your point, we've all had moments just as parents where maybe we've snapped a little bit because of behavior.
No, never. I've never been that
Okay,
parent.
so you've not you, right? Of course. And I definitely remember some time, and not necessarily what I've snapped, but like where I had to literally put my daughter over my shoulder when she was 3 years old, taking her out of the mall. Or there was one time at the Magic House in St. Louis, it was like, oh my, she didn't want to leave, which I understand. Like, remember practically dragging her out. That's another story. But, just on those times that as parents, maybe we snap a little bit. Is there just a good general repair line, or how do we come back to center? Because those are also manners. That's etiquette. That's, again, going to your point of treating the children with the same respect that you would want them to treat others.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking, maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
Yeah. I think a good apology is a good apology, and it works in every relationship. It works between parents and children the same way it does between friends or employers and employees. It's an important part of.
You're wrong. You overreacted. It's just sort of a reset.
And doing that from an emotionally calm place, a rational place, a place that's reflective. And the language that my 3-year-old has learned in daycare right now is, I'm sorry, is there something I can do to make it better? And there's not always a version of that, but I love to think of what the adult version of that might be. A child might not have a suggestion, but a willingness that's more than just the I'm sorry. It's the I'm sorry. And again, not a lot of excuses or reasoning, but we can talk about situations. And you talk about how you wished you'd handled it, how you'd like to handle it better in the future. And that can be a remarkable thing for a child to hear, a parent or acknowledging fallibility and a willingness to change and be better.
Yeah, that we're human too. And that I've had to remind my kids of that. The older kids, that, look, I'm making mistakes too. Like I'm trying to figure this out as well. So it's a good way to just sort of reset. One thing I want to make sure we really talk about, because this comes up, I can't tell you how often, and your kids are a little bit younger, but now that I have 2 teenagers, is phone and digital etiquette and manners. And please help us, Dan, because, I just wonder, maybe do we start, are there, a top 2 or 3 rules that you think every family should have in place when it comes to phones or tablets or all the digital devices?
I wish I could say these are the 3 rules. Apply these, and it's all going to be solved. It's all going to work. But I say think about total screen time. I think is one thing. Just the amount of time people spend in that form of communication limits the amount of time they spend with face-to-face interactions. And those face-to-face interactions, those in-person experiences, are how we develop the capacity to empathize. It's how we maintain the capacity to empathize as adults, but it's how we build those skills as children. And so I think time on device is one thing. I think what is actually being watched and absorbed is another question. And that can be very difficult. There are so many ways to monitor and track both those things. There's a story that I love to share when this question comes up. My wife and I were having this discussion. Our children are 8, 6, and 3, but very close to 4, and very close to 9 too, actually. And she put the question out on a WhatsApp text thread to all of her cousins who all have kids, all different households, all different sizes. What are you doing about devices or phones and kids? And we got very thoughtful replies from all the different households that the text went out to, and they were all different. And then the discussion that developed out of this text thread between all these different families and all these different approaches to online access and total screen time really illustrated for me what a personal choice it is. And it's the parenting question today. At what stage and in what ways do we give children access to the information super highway? And it isn't a question with one answer, but I can tell you that you have to be intentional about it, because the smartest, most brilliant minds in the world are working right now on capturing our attention and holding it for as long as humanly possible. And unless each of us is an active participant in that relationship and set our own boundaries based on our own social goals, you will be at the mercy of the decisions that those other very smart people are making for you. So that's it's such a general answer, but I really like to focus the question there, that take control of your device, take control of your own relationship with your device. For me, this question started with my first screen time report on my iPhone. And it told me that I was on my phone 18 hours a day on average the first week that it checked. Before I can talk to my kids, before I can talk to other parents about what they do with their kids, I have to address myself. I have to not be that kind of parent around my kids. So that's the other question. Every time there's a good etiquette question about someone else, there's probably 3 fingers pointing back at you that are going to give you a clue as to what the answer might be.
Well, it goes back to modeling, right? Like all of it goes back to that idea of modeling. I wonder, just what is the standard sort of defaults when it comes to phones or devices around meals, or even in the car? Like, my thought is phones are not anywhere on the table. But as we've talked about, like, manners, etiquette constantly evolve. Is it I mean, it's all depending on how you feel in your household, but like in general, is that okay now? Because they are everywhere. Like, are there just some basic etiquette? Is there basic etiquette or manners around phones at the table? Let's start with that.
Absolutely, there are. Okay. And two themes. One, you have to know the rules to know when and how to break them. So even in an increasingly casual and informal world where we want to be able to decide, in this occasion, it's okay for me to take my phone out and use it. That implies an awareness of an expectation that you don't, or an awareness of the rule that you're breaking. That's the whole idea of informality. The table, a place where people are sharing a meal, is still one of the places that statistical survey data shows people expect people not to be on their phones. It's not that there's never a meal situation where someone can be on a phone and it's not seen as rude. But in general, that's a place where you want your etiquette antenna out and you want to keep your phone put away. It's the most important social ritual that we participate in, sharing food with other people. And keeping that experience, a connecting human experience, is the potential rewards for that are so great that it is still an understood value and expectation that that's a place where we want to protect it. We want to protect the human experience and stay off our phones if possible. Obviously, there are situations where you're going to violate that. If what you're doing on your phone is in service of that group, go for it. If that phone is a tablet that's got a coloring app on it and it's no different than the placemat and the crayons that the family-friendly restaurant with the popcorn machine gave you anyway, I could see a situation with a kid at a tablet where you can get them out to a family-friendly dinner. I know, right?
I'm
If people
surprised by
falling
this.
over
You're-
all over the place.
Wait, Dan, you're saying tablets okay at the table with young kids if they're doing like a coloring app and mom and dad want to have dinner together uninterrupted. Yes? So are we getting a permission
Maybe,
from Post Institute?
Maybe not at my house, not every night of the week, but on the first meal out to the ground round, the family friendly restaurant in Burlington that's oftentimes a first kids restaurant experience.
Yeah.
If it starts to draw out that table time long enough that you can have an early family dinner experience out and it's not loud, it's not bothering other people, it's not there's a lot of other families around, perfectly fine scenario to do something like that. That same iPad out with a video game that's not silenced, or in a restaurant that's creating a very different atmosphere and ambiance and experience for its clientele, probably not. Every night at dinner at home, for me, probably not. But are there situations? Is there one night a week where maybe that happens, or early going out experiences? Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Like, you don't have to be so rigid. I find too, my rules have evolved based on birth order too. Like, I just think of the airplane, with traveling with our oldest, we would have books and crayons and coloring books and all the things. And now when we're going on the plane with like my youngest, it's like, where's your iPad? Do you want to download some Netflix? Like, what are we watching?
And where's your headphones so that we can keep that from bothering all the people around you? It's a different set of organizing and managing. Yeah.
Right. So it's the same thing. It all evolves. One thing too, I will say, just going back to like devices and being in spaces together, the car, and this comes up with my kids. Now, my 18-year-old has a phone, obviously. She's had one for a while. We just got one for our 13-year-old. But I'm always after my daughter in particular, like, put your phone away. We're talking. Put your phone away. Like, while we're sitting in the car, what's your take on phone use? Because it does create like where you're very individualistically tied into a phone versus having a conversation in the car. Maybe it's another one of those where sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But that is one that I'm always, put your phone away. What are you doing? Put your phone away. I'm trying to talk to you.
We always say beware the captive audience when you're on your phone. If you're looking for the situations to be accountable, not in elevators, definitely not in bathrooms, and probably not in line. If your conversation, did I remember to get everything on the grocery list real quick? Someone understands that, but a long, ongoing conversation that everyone around you is subjected to. No, cars are captive audiences that people often don't think about. And our phones are so networked into our cars now, very seductive. You can slip into a lot of phone calls in cars that other people are subjected to. So I think just that there are two issues to me with that. One is the isolation. I'm going off by myself and I'm not participating. That can happen with a book as well as a phone.
It's texting, right?
But the it bothering other people in the car is another version of it. And I think you want to have some care for both of those things. And if I'm you, and I love car time with my kids. It's one of the times where we get to actually talk and spend some time together. I'm telling them that. I'm telling them this is time I value. My mom used to love to drive me to school in the morning because she'd talk to us about it, said it was her favorite time of the day. It is for me too. Could we please keep our phones put away till X, Y, or Z? And good work, Mom.
I want to talk to you. Like, we've had a couple of moments where like our kids have said something in public and it's like, oh my gosh, that's so blunt. like in like kind of wanting
Mhm.
to figure out a respectful parent response that teaches kids like, maybe don't say that in public, right? Like, how
Yeah.
do we find that balance?
Um, uh, uh, the answer that is so frequent, I'm like, talk to them about it, but away from the situation. Don't compound the error by addressing it in front of the person who was being talked about. It can make it worse for them and for your child. I think
Mhm.
sometimes discretion is the better part of valor and part of teaching children that not everything needs to be said, that our words have impact, that we want to moderate the ways that we talk, take care with other people. Starts right in that moment with the way you address the mistake that they made, how much emphasis you give that mistake in front of the person who was potentially hurt or offended by it in the first place.
Do you find any
But
rules around? I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, and but address it. Talk to them about it
Yeah.
afterwards, and it can be in a positive context. You might not be aware of the power of your own words, or the impact that saying something like that can have on someone, even when it's an 8-year-old saying it or a 9-year-old saying it. And I wanted to talk with you about it because I noticed it. It made me a little uncomfortable when that happened. It doesn't need to be that it hurt that person's feelings. You don't know. You should feel differently about it. Something I noticed when it happened. It made me a little uncomfortable. I wanted to talk to you about it.
Do you find you get questions or comments about just play dates and birthday parties? This is a whole different thing than from like I used to just go out the door and find kids in the neighborhood and call it good, right? And now
Yeah.
there is such a dynamic around play dates, and it's like you become the cruise ship director as parents. So, are there unwritten rules maybe even now about play dates, whether it's drop off pickup, communicate food allergies? I think about birthdays, and birthdays are a whole different level now with the
Yeah.
RSVPs or bringing siblings. Like there's sort of friendship dynamics where parents are sort of running the show.
Yeah. Your description of it as a cruise director is so apt.
With the
And
director. Yes.
I feel the pressure of it as a parent. Am I cool enough to get my kids to hang out with the cool crowd? I have to be able to like
Right.
get along and do those. Anyway, my own nervousness and social anxiety, right, projected and mapped onto my kids.
That,
These are things that we all struggle with. We can't get adults to respond to dinner party invitations. People have stopped throwing dinner parties because they can't plan a meal because they can't get their guests to reply in time to actually plan it. I think the big etiquette category of hosting and guesting is one where, as a parent, it can actually give you all kinds of good material to build good parenting out of. And really thinking about host and guest roles can be a great way to start to find the decisions that you can make with kids about social relationships and interactions. So I've got an 8-year-old, almost 9-year-old who's growing a friendship with a new friend right now and really wants to get together with her and would love for it to be a sleepover, an overnight. And we just don't know the parents yet. So I was talking with her about sort of a first step here is getting a text exchange going between the parents. And then the language is, well, it's much easier to invite someone over than to get someone to invite you over. So if you really want
totally.
to do something socially, let's think about how we invite someone and what's a reasonable invitation, how we issue the invitation. We need a phone number. We need a text exchange. We need something to invite them to do that we think they would enjoy, or if they could say yes to, or that would be a reasonable thing for a parent that didn't know us to say yes to. But it's it's about building an awareness of being a good host or being a good guest, and what the stages of that relationship are and what the marks are becomes a real teaching opportunity. And hopefully in my world, I'm looking for some help from them. Who are the friends you want to hang out with? Because I can't decide. I like these parents. I don't like those parents. I'd rather it was this group than that group. Who do you want to spend the Saturday afternoon with? Who do you want to go skiing with? What's the um and 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 between both of us, we get the honest answers and the good solutions.
You're right. We talked a little bit about just, I definitely want to hit on thank you notes. You know, I know we don't get a lot of text thank yous versus handwritten thank yous. Like, what's your thought on just thank you? Say you've had the birthday party or you've had a birthday, just in general. What is your advice on kid thank you notes?
Uh,
What should they look
with
like?
thank yous, more is better. Gratitude is like cement in relationships because it feels so good for both parties. It feels good for the person expressing gratitude. It feels really good for the person being acknowledged and receiving it. So you almost can't fail with this one. You can't overemphasize it. You can't overdo it. There's data on this. People will think about writing a thank you note and they'll say, oh, it's going to be weird. It's going to be strange. The person who receives it's going to think I'm awkward or weird or strange because you haven't done it before. That's the way you feel. And you project that onto someone else. Universally, the other person receives the thank you note. And what they say about the person who sent it is that was so thoughtful. That was so considerate. That was so kind. They're so friendly. They're so well organized. They're so nice. So first of all, just as a skill, as a thing, go for it. Do it. Don't doubt yourself. If the thought pops in your mind, I could thank someone for this. Do it. It probably means that it's worth doing. The medium is less important than the exchange of gratitude. The handwritten thank you note is remarkable. It's such a powerful tool. We don't get handwritten mail anymore. It will stand out. It will make you stand out. It will make your thanks stand out. The process of building it and doing it will reinforce it for the person who's expressing the thanks in ways that are important and valuable as well. But it's not your only option. There are plenty of grandparents who would love a FaceTime call with their grandchild where they show them the thing that they sent, show them how they play with it, what they did with it. That is a significant and meaningful experience and would be the preferred way to receive that thanks. We say, if you haven't done it warmly in person, you absolutely want to follow up. If you haven't had a chance to deliver an in-person thank you for particularly a gift you've received, but also for major opportunities or just someone does something very nice for you. The gold standard is the in-person. I look you in the eyes, you see my smile, you hear the tone of my voice, you feel the compassion that I feel. That's the best. Absent that, figure out a way to follow up, do it over a distance, and think about the medium because it's part of the message. A handwritten thank you note's a great option. It's not your only option. Email thanks for email favors, text thanks for text favors. Think about that personal phone call, that personal video call, or a handwritten note for things that really are significant for you as well.
Yeah. Do you have any pro tips maybe on just teaching gratitude without forcing it? Like, okay, we'll say thank you. Time to say thank you.
Yep.
Or, in a way that, like just thinking teenagers in particular, like where you go, okay, whatever, like the big eye roll.
Yeah.
Like how do we teach gratitude without forcing it?
Yep. Back to core principles. I want to affirm for you the only mistake you can make with a thank you note is that it comes across as insincere, fake, artificial, forced, put on. That's not honest. That's not sincere. That's not in the core principles of good etiquette. And things that can make your thank you feel insincere or rote. There's nothing individual or specific. So when you write that note or have that call, you are responsible for one original thought, something that personalizes the expression of thanks, something that makes it unique. And it can be about the thing you're thanking for. It can be about the thought or effort that went into it. It can be about the value you have in the relationship and the way it sustained it. But something that personalizes it is very important. It's a big part of it. If you're doing it in person, that it's tone of voice, that it's not a thrown away, cast away thing, but that there's eye contact, that your body is calm, that your attention is directed to someone, and that you say it in the way that you mean it. And that is part of it. It's not the word that's magic. If you were a group of 5-year-olds, I'd tell you the magic's in you. And it's how we use those words that matters. The words themselves, I can give you a sarcastic please that's not kind or courteous. And I can give you a genuine or sincere please that is thoughtful and will turn a demand into a request.
If there was one piece of advice for parents and all these things that we've talked about, that the parents who are really, really wanting to make sure they are raising kind, courteous kids with manners and etiquette, what would that be?
spend time with them and treat them the way that you would want them to be treating other people. I will share with you that I have been presenting and teaching etiquette for almost 20 years now. And almost every audience that I get to spend time in front of, I ask the question, who are your models for good behavior? Where do you learn? And I ask it as a, not to get a certain answer, but I'm sort of an opportunity to publicly poll and ask people that question. And for years, I heard so many different things. And over the last year and a half, the answer that I hear the most is parents. Every once in a while, I get teachers or educators, and I'd never heard that one before, ever. And I'd hear parents occasionally, but people could, for the last 2 decades, could point to public figures that were shared touch points. We've lost a lot of that. And more people are identifying their parents and the home environments that they grew up in as the places that they learned how to treat people. And it has been our experience at Emily Post, before I got that anecdotal data about the current generation. My mother used to tell parents, don't worry about teenagers that question everything. That's their job. They're at that stage of their developmental process. Your job at this time is to be there and be consistent. And what is remarkable is that as adolescents and late stage adolescents transition to adulthood, as they actually start to take on the roles and responsibilities that adults play in a functioning society, they oftentimes return to the core behaviors that they are taught at home, the ones that they questioned and assessed and tested, but they're still their frame of reference, and they provide the ground that those people stand on. So remember that and be that person, because that's the foundation that you're giving your children.
Be that person. I love it. Dan, thanks so much. I also want to mention, too, we'll have more resources, including a link to the Emily Post Institute on our website, which is wgme.com/raisingme. Dan, such a pleasure and such great information.
Well, thank you for having me, and good luck out there.
Well, first and foremost, a big thank you to Dan. I was so grateful for him to accept our invitation. I mean, when you think manners and etiquette, it's Emily Post, right? Like, it's such a pleasure to speak with him. And there were a few takeaways for me. One, I think, just simply, manners are manners, modern or not, right? Etiquette is treating others with honesty, respect, consideration. Even if it is with modern tech and with modern life, screens, group chats, all the things, manners matter. All the moments, small shifts can really just make a big impact. And I think, too, it's not about perfection. Manners are being thoughtful, especially if things are awkward or emotional. And finally, kids are learning what we model, the way we talk, text, apologize, handle frustration. That really teaches more at home than any lecture ever will. Thank you so much for listening to Raising Me. Got to say a big thank you, of course, also to our sponsor of Sweetser Behavioral Health. I'm Adrienne Stein, and this episode was edited by Megan Littlefield with production assistance from Carissa Paulson. Please follow Raising Me wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, consider a positive rating and review, which ultimately helps others find this message. Wherever you are, I hope you learned something new and get to take a little time for you.